there's three essential patterns, if you will, that show up again and again and again when people do these practices. The first one is this idea of impermanence. It's simply noticing that everything is in constant flux. And we notice this first and foremost in simply noticing what's happening in the mind, that whatever the experience is of this moment is already gone. Remember that break we had? Gone, right? All the sensations, the sights, the tastes, the experiences of the break, the conversations, all gone. We're now here. We're now on to this next moment of experience. And the more we do these practices, the more we step out of the thought stream, the more we notice that, yes, it's a constantly changing kaleidoscope of experience. That's what we observe in consciousness. The second thing we notice, and this is the tendency of the mind toward unsatisfactoriness. This is, again, if you don't mind me using the Buddhist psychological idea, it's called dukkha, this is what got poorly translated as life is suffering, if you've ever heard that phrase. It's really the observation that the mind is very often complaining about something. And this exists in, actually my favorite translation of this, dukkha is sometimes called life is suffering. That's not a good translation. Another one is that the mind is often dissatisfied. My favorite comes from a great philosopher sage who's very interesting because she's a woman, she's North American, she happens to be Jewish. Some of you may know her work. She went by the name of Rosanna. And Roseanne famously said, if it's not one thing, it's another. That is the quintessential insight of dukkha. That is noticing that the mind is always complaining about something. And this unsatisfactoriness exists in two flavors, negative and positive. And let me just walk you through this because we're going to see these as we do the practice. Negative dukkha is the most familiar one. It's too hot in here, I want it to be cooler. It's too cold in here, I want it to be hotter. This would be good, but it's too salty. I like him a lot, but he talks too much. And on and on and on. All of the things that aren't quite right, the things I wish were different, that the mind is always going on and on and on, commenting on this and wanting them to be different. That's one form of unsatisfactoriness. The other form of unsatisfactoriness is even funnier in a way. That's when we're having a really wonderful experience. You're talking to your child and it's just harmonious and related and wonderful, or to your friend, or to your parent, or to your teacher or relative, and it's just a great experience. Or you're in some scene in nature and it's just rapturous and it's perfect and you're really soaking it up. Or you're involved in a meditative practice and the mind is really centered and present, or in prayer practice or something, and it just feels so wonderful. Or for that matter, you're just eating a dynamite, falafel or something. But because we're intelligent creatures, we realize very rapidly, but it's not going to last, right? It's a great experience, but it's going to be over in a few minutes, and then who knows, right? And, ultimately nothing lasts, right? So that's positive unsatisfactoriness. The thing's great, but it's not going to last, and we're in pain over that. And one of the things we see in mindfulness practice is the mind is almost always complaining about something. It's almost always either I want it to be different, or it's wonderful and I'm afraid it won't last. The third thing we see is this idea that we never actually find the separate enduring self in here. Let me tell you what I mean by that. What we notice when we do these practices is we notice a lot of thoughts about me. We'll use me as an example because I happen to be talking. So I wake up in the morning and I think, how's Ron feeling? Did Ron sleep well today? What's Ron going to wear today? Ron better brush his teeth now. What time is it? When's Ron need to be somewhere? On and on and on. Thoughts about me, oh, how's Ron's wife? I should say hello, various kinds of things, but they seem to focus a great deal on the star of our show, the hero of our movie, who is Ron, right? That's a lot of these thoughts, right? Only when we do these meditation practices, where is he exactly? Is he the thought that comes in that says, not following my breath very well? Is he the thought that comes in that says, I wonder how long this is going to last today? Is he the thought that comes in that says, there's a pain in the left knee right now, hope it doesn't get worse? Where's the Ron? Is Ron the voice? Is Ron the image here that comes into the mind? Is Ron the one who I think of as a good person or a bad person? So one of the things that we find is we never actually find the little homunculus. We never find the little man or woman who's the star of the show. We just hear a lot of narratives about him or her going on. So people who do these practices from a lot of different traditions, they use different names for them, but they notice these things. They notice everything's changing, the mind is always complaining, and I don't actually find this self, this essence, right, who is the star of our show so often. Now these insights can be enormously powerful therapeutically. And in fact, I'd argue that one of the therapeutic goals of mindfulness practices is to help people to see that all things are in constant flux, and that the mind is constantly complaining, and all of this preoccupation about me is actually based on a misunderstanding. We're going to talk about that misunderstanding